Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends until we tell it to stop. We're so glad you could attend. Come inside, come inside. I just thought of that. That's pretty cool, right, Neil?
You should write a song like that.
I should. Welcome back to ChRAWnology. It's an episode-by-episode recap of WWF's Monday Night Raw from episode 1 until Marvel decides to stop making superhero movies. I'm Dave Thackera. I'm a casual wrestling fan. I can jump in and out whenever I want and not lose any sleep. He's Neil Trauma. Let's just say that if there was an Alcoholics Anonymous equivalent for pro wrestling, he would have probably a 2-day chip at most. Hi, Neil.
Hey, Dave, let me just throw a few things out at you. First of all, you may not be too off base when you say, or at least you make a comparison of WWE to Marvel. If you've been following the wrestling news this week as we record this here in early June 2021, I'll just make that a little bit of a cryptic note. There could be some big news happening at some point here this year, or not. You never know. Also, a lightning bolt literally struck about 3 blocks from my house just a second ago while we're recording. So who knows how this show is going to go. We might go all in your house, beware of dog on our listeners during this show. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you'll know when we're doing ChRAWnology in about 3 years.
Was it a lightning bolt, or did Kane get control of your neighborhood pyrotechnics? We'll have to wait to find out.
Yeah, we'll find out.
What's happening in the wrestling world as we approach episode 15 of Monday Night Raw?
Well, yeah, the wrestling world in 2021 certainly interesting. And in 1993, at least things are getting a little more interesting, Dave, because we're finally building towards a pay-per-view. It's the King of the Ring. We're going to talk about it later on. Brand new pay-per-view for the WWF. Other than that, Hulk Hogan's still the WWF champ. We're not really seeing him at all on Raw. We are going to see Shawn Michaels, though. He's the IC champ, and he's how this show opens. But, Dave, what was going on in the world in 1993, which I'm not going to give you a break on telling us because I see your preview and I need to hear you pronounce this name.
Indecent Proposal was the number 1 movie in America. That was the one where Woody Harrelson's wife got propositioned by Robert Redford. This was a couple of days after Sea Hero won the Kentucky Derby, as you remember well. And Dinjari Banda Wajelatunga became the 3rd executive president of Sri Lanka, a moment that we will all remember where we were when this happened.
And I hope all of our Sri Lankan listeners email in to correct Dave on his pronunciation.
Absolutely. We start the episode with Vince and with Bobby the Brain Heenan and with Macho Man in a classic macho rainbow Lisa Frank checkerboard outfit. This is the 2nd consecutive show that I probably liked more than I should, simply because we didn't have Rob Bartlett on it. But I'm a little bit confused at the beginning of this episode because we're starting the episode with HBK Shawn Michaels, a recognizable name, and he's in a championship match with a belt on the line, Neil, against Hacksaw Jim Duggan. I don't know how to process this from an episode of Raw.
Oh, I really hope everyone can hear the thunder outside right now. But yeah, Shawn Michaels, Hacksaw Duggan, IC title to open the show. I told you a while back that these shows were going to get better. And the reason they get better is because we see a lot of Shawn Michaels in the IC title. Get used to this, Dave, because this is actually a lot of how these shows are going to be built up for the next little while here on Raw. And it definitely makes for a better show because this was a really fun match, even though I guess you could tell everyone what happened. We kind of got a screw job finish in this match, but at least it was going somewhere. I had fun with this. I liked everything about this.
It was a fun match. It was glorious. It only got annoying a little bit because I'm over Hacksaw Jim Duggan's shtick. Like, it's 1993. This might have worked well in the 80s, but it's near the end of its usefulness as he tries to get USA chants going. And he goes, ho, in the match, I don't know, about 1,700 times. That's an unofficial tally, but it's pretty close.
But the ho is over, so I will give him that. I mean, the fans do like chanting that along with him. And I'll say this, at least he has a purpose. He's not just random goofball hitting heels with a 2x4 or, just I'm fighting for America against whoever the random, evil foreigner is. At least he's trying to win a title. He has a purpose. He's got a lot of babyface fire out there. So as far as Hacksaw Jim Duggan goes, this is probably the best Hacksaw Jim Duggan you're going to see. Now, the best Hacksaw Jim Duggan, still a pretty low bar, but it's still the best Hacksaw Jim Duggan you're going to get at this point.
That is true. But at the end of the match, it was a screw job finish. Shawn Michaels basically just, after getting clocked over the barrier into the crowd, basically just walks off. And Hacksaw wins the match, but doesn't win the belt and loses his mind over this. He grabs the microphone, starts cutting this promo where, this isn't right. I'm gonna get with Jack Tunney and make it right. And as we go to commercial, he's literally just a dude in the middle of the ring on live TV, sitting in a chair with his 2x4, waiting to be satisfied. Like this is live TV at its best in the early 90s, I guess.
And I mean, you know what? Duggan really isn't wrong.
No,
This
he's
really
not.
is the dumbest of pro wrestling rules. The fact that the champion can literally just walk away from a match and retain his title because of a loophole in the rules. So Duggan isn't wrong, and there's more to this. His sit-down strike goes for a little while, and then we'll see what happens with Duggan later on in the show. But we take a break from the in-ring action for one of your favorite parts of any Raw, the pay-per-view preview, Dave. King of the Ring is coming.
King of the Ring report with Mean Gene Okerlund. This is sponsored by Ico Pro. Who knew that even in the 90s we had commercial sponsors for everything? Neil, how did they get such a lucrative sponsor like Ico Pro to sponsor this segment?
Yeah, I gotta love how when they don't have an actual sponsor, they just sponsor it with one of their own products. It's lovely.
We've worked in local radio long enough. We know exactly how that came to be. But we do find out that for the King of the Ring tournament, it will be an 8-man bracket style event. Bret Hart, the number 1 overall seed. Mean Gene says, for obvious reasons. And I think we can all understand that. Lex Luger qualified for the tournament over the weekend, which is really exciting. And we're going to get a couple of other qualifiers so we know what the tournament's going to look like. But here's the big news to come out of this, Neil. We're actually going to see Hulk Hogan in the WWF again. They're announcing a Hulk Hogan-Yokozuna championship match. Hulkster's back. All right. A month from now.
I mean, I would have to go back and check, but I almost feel like, is this the first time we even see his face on Raw since he won the title at WrestleMania 9?
I got to think that it is. Like,
Yeah.
they made mention of it, but we didn't actually see him.
Yeah. Crazy. He's going to face Yokozuna, and yeah, the rest of the tournament shaping up. I remember this being a really good tournament, Dave, but boy, are the results of these qualifying matches ever obvious. Razor Ramon versus El Matador, and Hacksaw Duggan versus Papa Shango.
You mean to tell me that those endings are not much in doubt right now?
Not at all in doubt. Speaking of endings, not at all in doubt, we got a squash match coming up, but do we have any news on the Jim Duggan, Jack Tunney sit-down strike?
Well, we learned that while we were listening to Mean Gene Okerlund, Jack Tunney apparently hard at work in the WWF president/commissioner office, and Jack Tunney is on the case. So I'm sure Jim Duggan will be satisfied in some manner in an official capacity with a full apology from the WWF, I'm sure. But then
it's been a busy couple of weeks for old Jack Tunney. He's got Jim Duggan here demanding rematches. He had to look into Lex Luger's arm. Man, Tunney earning his paycheck here.
Yeah, he thought it was going to be an early retirement or something. Wrong. Match number 2, we get Doink, the Clown, versus the Kamikaze Kid. Now, Neil, the Kamikaze Kid was announced, and I looked up at my screen, and I was amazed that I actually knew who this was. Now, it's not just...
Yeah, you know this one?
It's not a man with a name. It's actually the Kamikaze Kid, so you can tell they're actually putting some effort into promoting him. But I know that the Kamikaze Kid eventually factored into our lives a lot more, and we'd see him a ton on Raw. This man named Sean Waltman, the Kamikaze Kid, tell us a little bit more about this incarnation.
Now, Dave, don't ruin the ending of this storyline here. Now, this guy, Sean Waltman, he had made a lot of waves on the indie scene, Lightning Kid. He was kind of the Rey Mysterio of his day a few years before that, in that he was a guy who did spectacular moves. And that's how he got famous, was by being a lightweight kind of guy that did a lot of these like spectacular moves in matches against the heavyweights. So the WWF actually signed him, which was pretty shocking because they usually only sign the big musclehead guys. And then they put him on Raw as a jobber and immediately have him lose to Doink. So I guess they have no plans at all for this kid. They're going to do nothing with him. I guess we'll just forget about him.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's like, yeah, they're finally given a chance. They're going against their own instincts. They're signing a guy that doesn't look like, Lex Luger. And then they make him lose to a guy in clown makeup. Oh, God. Yeah. Anyway,
they don't know what to do with this kid. I guess let's just see what happens, all right?
After this match was over, when they came back from commercial again, the cameraman at this live event was not subtle at all about really focusing on the best assets of the Raw ring girl. Uh, Again, in the 1990s on basic cable TV, this was as pretty close to softcore porn as we could get. She was very attractive, and we got uh, a good look at her chest. But then match
Uh,
number 3 started.
yeah, Dave, I don't know. A little bit later on in the show, there's a close up of a woman pretty provocatively eating a WWF ice cream bar. So I think they were really trying to walk the tightrope on this show, that director.
That is true. But match number 3 started with Bob Backlund taking on Dwayne Gill. Now, was it Dwayne Gill or was it the Tiger King just a few years early?
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's match number 3 in an early episode of Raw. The outcome wasn't in doubt. It was just fun to see action. But this action took a scary turn. Did you see this? That early on in the match, Dwayne Gill took a bump that, like, Bob Backlund was kicking out his leg and tripping him, and Gill oversells it and does this exaggerated flip and lands on his head and neck in a way that I swear to God, I thought they were going to have to get an ambulance out here because he paralyzed himself.
Gil always takes some pretty some pretty frightening bumps. Honestly, I didn't notice it and bump on it as much as you did because I think I was so distracted by the fact that Dwayne Gill in this match is literally the most redneck that ever rednecked. Like,
Yep.
I don't know how he was not just permanently residing at a truck stop somewhere in South Carolina or West Virginia or something. This guy, I don't even know what to say about the two-toned mullet, the gear, just oh my god. But
Well, this does take place in the Manhattan Center in New York, New York. Are we sure they just didn't find him like under a bench at Grand Central or something?
something like that, or he just like stepped off the bus at Port Authority and was like, "Where am I?" and just wandered into the Manhattan Center. But I mean, Gil, we obviously know he's around quite a bit. I mean, he is actually a pretty established jobber, but boy, did he ever look. He just what a look. What an early 90s jobber look for Gil here. But yeah,
Correct.
I guess that's all we really need to say about this one. Bob Backlund wins the
No,
squash match. I don't know what they're
there
doing with Backlund here.
there's one more thing to say. It's the finish. Like, we knew the match was going to end with Bob Backlund winning, but the end was actually pretty cool. Bob Backlund did this Matrix style roll up. He bent backwards and pinned Dwayne Gill to the mat while doing like a reverse plankers. It was fun. Like, it wasn't a great match, but it was a pretty cool finish. And for an older dude like Bob Backlund to do that move to wrap up the match, it was pretty cool. I'll give him that.
Well, say what you want about Backlund, but I mean, he is in tremendous shape, and he is like, oh, he's still in tremendous shape today at whatever age Bob Backlund is right now. So you can't take anything away from him conditioning wise. But this character and this push, yeek. I wonder if it's going anywhere.
Maybe. But we do get Hacksaw Jim Duggan coming out again, looking super fresh from the shower, or at least what my grandmother called a whore's bath, where you stand in front of the sink and you splash some water on your face and you wet your hair down a little bit. I don't think Jim was getting in and out of his gear and then coming back out to the ring, but he did look refreshed and ready to go for round 2. And it's a good thing because we're going to have round 2 at some point next week.
Yes, we are. Lumberjack match for the Intercontinental title, which, I mean, it makes sense that that's the direction they would go. Shawn ran away, so Jack Tunney's going to say, all right, buddy, you want to do that? We're going to do a lumberjack match. So these dudes are going to be around the ring, and you're not going to be able to run away. Although, I got to say this, and I was going to wait until later on to mention this because they don't say it until later on in the show. But for some reason, Vince McMahon and all the announcers become fixated on the lumberjack aspect of the lumberjack match. Because it's a lumberjack match, they're going to put the wrestlers around the ring in lumberjack shirts. And for some reason, it's all they can talk about and promote. You mean they're going to be wearing flannel shirts? Oh, okay, Vince. Yeah, they're going to be wearing flannel shirts. I can't wait. You mean we might get to see Bob Backlund and Papa Shango in flannel? You know what? Now that I say that, if Papa Shango is out there in flannel, it's going to be worth the price of admission. So I take
I'm
it all
in.
back. I'm excited
I'm
about
in.
the flannel now. I'm also excited about the smoking guns. Wrestling needs so much more of this. This smoking guns vignette, spectacular.
It was an on the nose promo in the sense that we've got a tag team called the Smoking Guns. This time they're shooting a promo with literally freshly fired guns. They're shooting cans and bottles off a fence post. The smoking guns have smoking guns, and they're talking about their entrance into the WWE as the
But I
smoking
mean,
guns.
it's like a movie. Did you have a video camera, Dave, when you were a kid? Like, did you ever make a movie with your friends when you were in
Yep.
like high school? That's how
Yep.
these special effects were. So the guns take their guns out. They hold them. You know, they close one eye and they look ahead with the gun in their hand. And then the camera just hard cuts to something else. You hear an obviously edited in gun sound effect as these like 3 bottles just get shot off of a fence. Maybe it took 100 takes to actually get the bottle shooting off the fence. And then you hard cut back to the guns, smiling, twirling their guns, putting them back in the holster. Yeah, buddy, we're the smoking guns, baby, and we're coming. I love this.
After that was done and Neil's erection went down, we got a return of a WWF legend at this point. Even at this point, a legend, Captain Lou Albano, walking to the ring. Neil, let me ask you something. My favorite segment of this entire podcast. Neil, let me ask you something. Tell me about Captain Lou Albano. All I know of him is that he was a wrestler, I think, and he played Mario in the bad but awesome Super Mario Brothers Super Show, and he was Cyndi Lauper's dad or something. I don't know much about him. Tell me more about Captain
Yeah,
Lou.
I mean, Captain Lou, he was a tag team guy in the 60s, ended up becoming a manager, and ended up being one of the big managers, big heel managers in the WWF at the time. He was most famous, and I think they'd make even bigger deal of this in later years, but for managing tag teams, he was like always the guy who managed the heel tag team champions in matches. And in fact, they bring him out here to do commentary on a Head Shrinkers match. He used to manage the Head Shrinkers manager Afa along with Sika, and they were famously the Wild Samoans to the titles in the early 80s. But his big claim to mainstream fame, yeah, involves Cyndi Lauper, who he just happened to sit next to on a plane flight once, and they hit it off and became friends, and she ended up casting him as her dad in the Girls Just Want to Have Fun music video. He'd be in other music videos with her, and I mean, depending on how you look at it, that plane flight led to the explosion in popularity of the WWF and wrestling in general in the 80s because Albano became famous from the Cyndi Lauper videos. They ended up doing an on-screen feud where Albano as a heel claimed to be the force behind Cyndi Lauper's success. They did a huge wrestling show on MTV at the time where they had a women's title match with Wendy Richter and the fabulous Moolah, managed by Lauper and Albano. And eventually it led to an Albano face turn where he was turned on by Rowdy Roddy Piper, and who came to his aid was Hulk Hogan, which was the angle that led to the WrestleMania 1 main event involving Hogan and Piper in a tag team match. So it all stemmed from that one plane flight. Captain Lou, pretty darn pivotal in the wrestling boom of the 1980s. And here he is coming back, and he's actually going to start a program here with the Head Shrinkers that's going to go for about a year off and on, amazingly. So this is kind of a, big deal, this random tag team jobber match with the Head Shrinkers involving Captain Lou. But yeah, there's your backstory quick on Captain Lou.
Imagine how many similar situations today will never happen like that because people just put in their earphones and don't talk to people on planes.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine. Can you imagine sitting next to a guy who looks like Captain Lou on a plane and actually striking up a conversation? But then again, if you're Cyndi Lauper, that probably makes a lot of sense.
Fair enough. Well, we do get match number 5. He is there for a Head Shrinkers match against a random white guy and a random black guy. Like, I missed their names, and they were so uninteresting to me that I wasn't even about to rewind and find out who this match was.
I love Head Shrinkers matches, though. They do good squash matches. The Head Shrinkers are fun. I enjoy them as a tag team, even though, as we're going to get to with Kamala later, yeah, with 2021 eyes, they could give a little eye roll to the Head Shrinker gimmick. But at least here, they're depicted as, monster fighters who will beat you up and, not. Well, we'll get to Kamala later, but I like Head Shrinker squashes. This one was fun. And yeah, there's a WWF tape coming out, Dave. Are you excited about it?
Yeah, I came back to this, and I wasn't really sure what I was watching. I was watching the Bushwhackers do a home improvement video. Like, what?
This is just classic Vince McMahon and WWF marketing right here. It was true in 1993. It's still true today. So this tape was called Smack 'em Whack 'em, right? It's a Coliseum video. They made tons of them back in the day. I owned them all. Um, and it was usually an assortment of random leftover matches from TV tapings or whatever. And sometimes something rare they'd throw on there. But this one, Smack 'em Whack 'em, is actually one of the best ones they ever made because it includes the Bret Hart WWF title win against Ric Flair that never aired on television. And it includes a really historic match, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels in a ladder match in 1992. There's a little bit more trivia for you if you don't know this. This was going to be, it was at least rumored to be the match at SummerSlam 92 at one point. They were going to do Bret and Shawn in a ladder match. Bret's idea, because they used to do ladder matches in Calgary. They would end up not doing that. They went a different direction with SummerSlam. It would be Bret and the Bulldog. And Shawn Michaels brought back the idea of the ladder match for WrestleMania 10, which we'll get to that whole storyline in a few months here on ChRAWnology. But he would go on to be synonymous with the ladder match. And the really rare match between him and Bret is on this tape. All right. So two great historic matches. I mean, of course, the tape also included Crush versus the Berserker and Repo Man versus Earthquake, but it had two really great, really historic matches. And the thing that the WWF chose to promote here on Raw was that there would be a home improvement segment with Lord Al Hayes and the Bushwhackers. Because that's why you want to buy this wrestling tape.
Well, now I got to get a VCR again. Match number 6. We have Kamala, the Ugandan Giant, versus Bill Myers, Mike Myers, Dave Myers, Kyle Myers. I don't know. I didn't catch his name, but they refer to him as Myers throughout the match, and he made absolutely no impact in the match, so he doesn't deserve to have his proper first name recognized. Here we go.
Yeah, Kamala wins. Yep, that's all we need to know about that. He comes out with a big Zulu mask, which, Dave, no, it's not new. The big Zulu tribal mask has been around as part of the character. And hey, speaking of the character and why it's potentially racist, or speaking of Coliseum videos and their preposterousness, Dave, there is one. There's a Coliseum tape out there somewhere that features a segment where Slick teaches Kamala how to bowl.
God. No, just make it stop. All right, I'm done. Kamala smashed him, and we're moving on. This is the end of the episode, but we do get a promo for next week. Next week, as you said, we do get the Lumberjack match. Bobby the Brain Heenan, as the show goes off the air, is interviewing HBK, and HBK is spilling some secrets on how he's planning on winning that match. Ooh, I can't wait till next Monday.
Yeah, and you finally get your wish, Dave. You were asking last week for a King of the Ring qualifier on television. You're going to get it next week. That's the good news. The bad news is you're getting it in the form of Bam Bam Bigelow versus Typhoon.
Oh, come on. No. All right.
That's it. That's ChRAWnology. Do you have an MVP? I think I'm actually, you know what? Shawn had a great performance, but I think I'm going with Hacksaw. I liked Hacksaw's babyface fire here in this one. This is the last time Hacksaw's going to be relevant in the WWF, so I'm going to give him a vote here.
100%. We give him the MVP. Ho! For this particular week of ChRAWnology. Neil, wrap this up. What kind of closing thoughts you got, and where can people find us?
I'm done. Let's wrap this up before the storm knocks off power here at my house. They can find us where you usually find us. Google us, search for us. We're on Spotify. We're on Place to Be Nation in the wrestling feed. Finally back in action after taking our little break because of Peacock. So you can find us there. And, we hope you'll subscribe and keep listening to these shows. We're literally going to watch every episode of Raw for as long as we possibly can. Who knows how podcasts will change in 30 years when we're both staring down the face of retirement and we're still getting together every week to talk about Raw, Dave. Think of the wonders of the world when we finish ChRAWnology. And who knows, maybe in the next couple weeks here in 2021, the WWE will get sold to Disney and they'll cancel Raw, and then we'll actually know when this podcast is going to end.
Maybe they will. And maybe random conversations on airplanes are taking place right now that will steer our podcast in a direction hitherto unknown. Either way, I'm Dave Thackera. He's Neil Trauma. This has been ChRAWnology. We will see you guys again next week, where Neil and I will both be wearing lumberjack shirts.
Ho!